Hello and good evening to you. Welcome to News 360 and it's live my news up here at Desawa in Kanda. My name is Alfred Okanse.
And I am Solis Rose Quarter. Don't forget that we're live on DSTV channel 279. Now the headlines for this evening.
News 360 headlines is brought to you by Deluxipate.
New Biposo toll booth in the Western region collapses, leaving hundreds of commuters stranded.
And Speaker of Parliament tasks Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee to make available a report on the Right to Information Bill.
A race for national executive positions of the ruling New Patriotic Party takes shape as submission of nomination forms ends.
Also coming up tonight, the Attorney General files writ at the Supreme Court seeking to quash decision by the High Court in the Extant Cubic case.
And in business evening, the Bank of Ghana, 5 banks, we're told, have met to submit new regulatory framework on credit bureau referencing to Parliament.
And in international news this evening, Liberian Vice President Juro Howard Taylor apologizes to President George Weah for leaving the country frequently without informing him.
Feel free to join us with your thoughts as we go into the bulletin tonight here on News 360. Let's go on to our first story this evening. Remember, we're live on DSTV channel 279. Over 500 vehicles have been locked up in traffic for over 3 hours at the new Biposo toll booth, which is still under construction after the toll booth collapsed during excavation work by the contractor. Now, thousands of passengers and motorists were left stranded as a result. As at 5:10 p.m., about 3 hours after the incident, no police or any emergency service personnel had arrived at the scene. Vehicles to and from Takoradi and Accra are locked up in traffic at the opposite ends of the booth, save a few smaller saloon cars that have been able to maneuver through a temporal route and the bushes. Now, the contractor is currently trying to cut the metal to make way for the bigger vehicles. Let's just stay on this. Inshaba Parkwesi Simpson is my colleague, a connector firm in Takoradi, our sister station. Now, he's been following this particular story. Inshaba, thank you for your time. Good evening to you. Now, you earlier reported that neither the police nor NADMO or any other emergency officials had not been there. Tell us exactly the time when you left. What was the situation there?
Yes, we were living.
Hello. Hello, Inshaba. Your line is breaking up. If you could position yourself well. So,
okay?
Hello.
Yeah, is it okay now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. So around 5:30 p.m. We saw 2 police patrol vehicles rushing to the scene. Currently, as I speak to you now, the road has not been cleared for vehicular traffic. That heavy traffic vehicles can now move from the Takoradi end of the road as well as the Accra end of the road. So traffic has been eased as I talk to you now.
Did you engage a contractor at any point to tell you exactly what could have led to this collapse of this toll booth that he was constructing? Yes,
one of the neighbors on site told me they were trying to do some excavation works on the toll booth. You know, there was this old toll booth, but the position of that old toll booth is very dangerous because there have been a lot of incidents that vehicles have, actually rammed into the old one. So they are trying to relocate the old one to a new place that is about 200 meters from where the old one is currently situated. And this new one that they are constructing, one of the neighbors told me they were trying to do some excavation work on the new one, when incidentally part of the metal came in, resulting in the accident.
I see. Thank you. And no injuries, Inshaba?
No casualties.
Well, thank you. Inshaba Parkwesi Simpson is a colleague at a connector firm in Takoradi, sister station, giving us an update of the situation with the collapse of the toll booth there.
Now let's move away from that and do some other stories where the Speaker of Parliament, Professor Aaron Michael Quay, has tasked the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee to make available to the House a report of the Right to Information Bill. The committee has been working on the bill even during recess. The Speaker was addressing MPs on the first day of resumption from their almost 2 months break. Evelyn Tingma has more.
The Right to Information Bill, which was sent to Parliament under a certificate of urgency during the last meeting of Parliament, was subsequently withdrawn and relayed to be taken through the normal parliamentary procedure. Whilst on recess, the Joint Committees on Communication, Constitutional and Legal Affairs have been working on it. A stakeholders forum was held to that effect, where there were complaints about too many exemptions. When members of Parliament resumed work on Tuesday, the Speaker tasked the committee to make the report available.
I will appeal to Joint Committees on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs who've already done a great deal of work during the recess on the Right to Information Bill 2018 to make a report as quickly as possible in order for us to deliberate thereon.
The Speaker also urged MPs to desist giving out information tabled but not discussed on the floor of Parliament to the media. This was after the Majority Leader Oseiche Mensah Bonsu raised concerns.
Even though this is the forum for debate, we took them outside. That really developed some turbulence. The Speaker, if we have to work together as a collective, we must be very consultative and share information and not take anything from this house outside to the media. It doesn't help.
Minority Chief Whip Muntaka Mohammed Mubarak promised his side's cooperation. In presenting the business statement for the week, the Majority Leader said the Commission of Inquiry on the creation of new regions would brief members from the Bono Ahafo, Northern, Volta and Western regions on Friday, May 18, regarding their activities which had been brought to an end. Papers on agreements between Ghana and 4 other countries on double taxation were presented to the House by the Finance Ministry. But ranking member of the Finance Committee, Kesel Atoforsen, had concerns questioning what Ghana stands to gain from the agreements.
That what is the motivation why we are rushing to come to Parliament to get approvals for 4 different double tax agreements. We want them to estimate the fiscal cost to the state. We want them to give us evidence that Ghanaian businesses are also going to benefit from those countries, and it's not going to be done in a way for small individuals and small companies to benefit from.
He says the minority will fully scrutinize the documents and would oppose it if it appears to be in bad taste.
Now, a former Deputy Minister of Power, John Jinapor, has described as needless the debate on whether to scrap the Tema refinery or maintain it. He says Tema refinery can be a cash cow if it is put in good shape with an efficient management.
John Jinapor says the Tema oil refinery produces over 50,000 barrels of oil a day, more than half of the entire nation's oil demands. He says it is out of place for the sector minister to think of a new tour.
If there's any investment that ought to be made, it ought to be made in tour. If there's any investment that should ensure that we expand the frontiers of our petrochemical industry in terms of crude oil processing, I believe that it should be made with tour. I think that it is misplaced to begin to talk of a second refinery. Any managerial issues, if there is some level of efficiency that can be worked on, we'll do that as soon as possible.
The Yape Kusalgo MP says TOR should rather be put to good shape as the facility has the capacity to process the country's indigenous crude oil.
Indeed, when I was a minister, I remember we bought 2 million barrels of Tayin crude oil, put it in TOR tank farms, and requested that they begin to process that. Because we believe in value chain addition. We believe that we cannot continue to import processed products. We cannot continue to import refined products. Because when you take the crude oil and process it here, you create jobs, you save foreign exchange, and the byproducts, you can use it for so many other things.
The former deputy minister explained TOR had always been a tank farm.
Tor has a capacity of 1 million metric tons. That is a huge capacity. It's not a small plant. A lot of money has gone into that plant. So it can be a plant that keeps stock, at the same time process its own stock for its farms. So you can't just resign it to a tank farm. Then what happens to the CDU? What happens to the RFCC? What happens to all those investments we've made? What happens to the workers in Tor? And so it's a strategic plant. I think that the minister should review his plans. That is not what we intended doing. That is why we brought Bost and Tor together.
The Attorney General has filed a writ at the Supreme Court seeking to quash a decision by the High Court in a case involving mining company Exton Cubic and the state. An Accra High Court in February quashed a decision by the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, John Peter Amewu, to revoke the mining leases of Exton Cubic.
The writ filed ex-party one-party application by the Deputy Attorney General, Godfred Dame, says the ruling by the High Court presided over by Justice Akabuafo could undermine efficient administration of justice. The court, presided over by Justice Kweku Akabuafo, on February 8, maintained the Minister of Land and Natural Resources, John Peter Amewu, had no power to revoke the mining licenses granted to Exton Cubic to prospect for bauxite. Justice Akabuafo added the minister exceeded his powers by assuming the powers of an adjudicator. The court was of the view it is only a competent court of jurisdiction that can pass judgment on whether to revoke the licenses or otherwise. Even though the Deputy Attorney General believes the ruling is partly in the interest of government, he was quick to add that the judge went beyond his original jurisdiction. He is therefore praying the Supreme Court to intervene and reject the ruling by Justice Akabuafo. Godfred Dame, in his statement of case, insists the High Court judge lacked jurisdiction to enforce or protect a right which Exton Cubic did not have. He said the wrongful assumption of jurisdiction of the court by the judge is also in violation of Act 703. Clause 5 of Act 703 states, subject to subsections 4 and 5, the minister on behalf of the president and on the recommendation of the commission may negotiate, grant, revoke, suspend or renew mineral rights in accordance with this act. Based on this argument, Godfred Dame wants the justices of the Apex Court to nullify the ruling of the High Court.
Now, residents in Accra will have a respite from excessive noise following the ban on drumming and noise making by the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. But how well are residents and businesses coping with the ban?
The ban on drumming and noise making is a customary right that precedes the celebration of the Homowo Festival by the chiefs and people of Gamashi in Accra. The month-long ban, which began in the Accra metropolis from May 14, is expected to end on June 14, 2018. During the period, residents are required to ensure that noise levels are minimized to the barest. This is Tema Station, a lorry terminal in the business hub of Accra. Here, the news team observed that noise levels had been minimized to the barest limits. Loud speakers positioned at various terminals to attract passengers were not being used as a result of the ban. Consequently, the driver's mate have had to improvise.
We have affected, so because the noise have stopped, so they can't hear it. Our mates and do this in our drivers. We are suffering to call. And then we used to hold them and ask them whether you are going to Tama or you are going to Ashama.
At the Kwame Nkrumah Circle in Accra, it was obvious the ban was strictly being adhered to. The only noise one could hear from the streets were the sound of cars. Most pavements and streets, which were initially occupied by some street preachers to propagate the gospel, were deserted. Loud speakers positioned at some bus terminals, usually used to attract passengers, were also not in use.
The pavements are free from street preachers because of the ban on drumming and noise making.
The central business district in Accra was not any different. The usual noise that emanates from loud speakers from some music shops was absent. Street or outdoor preachers noted for delivering sermons on sidewalks and pavements in some parts of Accra were also unavailable, a clear indication the ban on noise making and drumming is being complied with.
And now to some politics, where the race for the national executive positions of the ruling New Patriotic Party, the NPP, is taking shape. Submission of nomination forms have officially ended.
Supporters of the New Patriotic Party thronged the party headquarters to cheer the various candidates to climax the submission of their nomination forms. Several candidates eyeing key positions in the party showed up to submit their forms. Two heavyweights vying for the National Youth Organizer position, Dominic Edia and Kamaruddin Abdullahi, both submitted their forms.
I am in it already. I know the dynamics in it already. I know the technicalities there already. And look, this game is going to be won on technicalities. And I'm telling you, I've said it everywhere. Weeks to elections, we are going to separate the men from the boys. And
I'm urging each and everybody to see this as a family fight. After that, we'll come back together and work together again. But I have no doubt that I started with a clean campaign and I'll continue with a clean campaign, and I am going to win, to lead the youth front of this party and make sure the NDC will remain in a position forever.
At the Nassar coordinator position race, 9 persons are contesting for the position.
working for the party is my mission. Working for the party is my habit. This is the guy who sacrificed his life to make sure that NDC will not save until we take them out of power. Yes, at this rate, I have done it.
You can plan, but he is the best planner. You understand? And I waited for this time, and inshallah, the time has come. Yes. And I believe this is my time.
Other key aspiring executives, including those vying for the position of General Secretary, they spoke to the news team.
We are not looking at just 8 years. We are not looking at 16 years. We are not looking at 32 years. We are looking beyond 40 years in government in order to ensure that the good work of the New Patriotic Party.
All the candidates believe they have what it takes to galvanize the grassroots towards achieving the new dream and to stamp the party's dominance in Ghana's political space.
Touching down with the women, making sure you build their capacity, because if you're able to build the capacity of a woman and for her to be confident and know what she is about, I tell you, that is where your success story begins.
David Atia, our citizen journalist, reports on the deplorable state of the Balungu-Namo Road in the Upper East region.
This is what is just at the middle of the road. A bridge has broken. And see how it has occurred. No car can pass any longer from this place. It has been this way since the rainy season. That was last year, 2017. Up to now, we've not seen any change. From Bongo Balungu, this has been Atia David's reporting. Thank you.
It's a clear death trap on that road. And as we do this, we expect that those who are clothed with the resources and the authority to check these things will move up to it. But you can also send your video report via the WhatsApp number 055-1433-044, 055-1433-044. Still to come tonight. To submit new regulatory framework on credit bureau referencing to Parliament.
And international news this evening, Liberian Vice President Jewel Howard Taylor apologizes to President George Weah for leaving the country frequently without informing him. Right, you're still watching News 360 live from the News Hub at Adesanwe, Kanda. We'll be right back with more news updates after this. Do stay.
All right, so you're watching News 360. A very good evening to you, and thanks for staying with us. Let's do some business now. My name is Nanikia Mensah Brampa, and beginning with tonight, Imani Africa, a think tank, has proposed to ECOWAS countries to capitalize on the automobile and energy sectors of Morocco to expand its economy. Speaking at the sidelines of Morocco accession to ECOWAS, President of Imani Africa, Franklin Kujo, was confident this will boost investment and commerce among member states.
Franklin Kujo praised the decision by the Moroccan government to join ECOWAS in 2017. He explained that their accession to ECOWAS will provide a formidable force for negotiations with countries of the world. Currently, Morocco is heavily engaged in the manufacture of automobile and strong energy sector policies to expand its economy. The president of Imani Africa implored African countries not to consider Morocco's accession to ECOWAS as undermining business. He proposed to Ghanaian and other private sector businesses to expand their frontiers and capitalize on opportunities in Morocco.
Ghana, for instance, is going to export a lot of oil and a lot of gas. Morocco needs lots of gas because they have a thriving fertilizer industry. And that's what we should be looking at. Tourism, for instance, we should explore the opportunities.
Currently, Morocco, which is the 7th fastest growing economy in the world, has a strong solar power base to provide energy. With its accession to ECOWAS, Managing Director for Sahara Wind, Khalid Benhamou, spoke about huge financial investments to support trade in ECOWAS.
Try to condition the access to the resources to their local value-added processing and the maximization of the outcome, and making sure, at least in terms of electricity and energy, highly strategic issues, that the access can be guaranteed to our population.
Minister for Zongo and Inner City Development, Abubakar Sadiq, expressed confidence in building stronger ties with the Moroccan government.
Talking of ECOWAS, we are talking of trade, we are talking of free movement of the people and services across our borders. I have been to Morocco several times, and I know how the people of Morocco are prepared to join West Africa and ECOWAS.
The event was organized by Amadeus Institute, based in Morocco, to discuss opportunities of Morocco's investments after joining ECOWAS. Currently, ECOWAS heads of state are discussing the review of protocols with Morocco to boost investor confidence.
And the second deputy governor of the Bank of Ghana says the central bank will soon take to Parliament a new regulatory framework on credit bureau referencing in the country. LC Awachi said the new law is expected to eliminate the gaps in the current law and also strengthen credit reporting by sanctioning banks that fail to comply with its provisions.
Recent happenings in the Ghanaian banking sector have given cause for many to worry. Many are asking what the future holds for banking in Ghana. Are there more banks to go down? As some financial and non-financial analysts are anticipating. These questions dominated deliberations at the Graphic Business Stanbic Bank breakfast meeting in Accra, which was on the theme Liquidity and Solvency Management, Boosting the Health of Banking in Ghana. Participants called on the central bank to enhance its disclosure and transparency guidelines for banks in the country, urging it to publish its on-site findings.
In the interest of transparency, still, I haven't seen any country that publishes on-site examination reports anywhere in the world. So that is not a matter of transparency. Transparency is good, but as a supervisor, you go and do your on-site inspections or examinations, you come back, you dialogue with the bank and its managers and board. You come back, you understand what's going on with the bank, and look within your toolkit to see what it is you can do to help the bank straighten out.
Putting out certain types of information could inadvertently affect the whole system, which ultimately becomes a problem for the larger economy. A discussion perhaps ought to take place about where to draw the line in terms of the balance between transparency and ensuring stability.
The second deputy governor of the Bank of Ghana Elsie Awazi, assured the Bank of Ghana is in control and that it is not going to allow regulatory forbearances anymore.
We believe in using all the tools available to us to ensure that the banks themselves take action to correct what needs to be corrected. And if they don't, then we step in and intervene, take over the bank, or put in any other measures that are required to ensure that your money is safe.
She announced that the central bank will soon take to Parliament a new regulatory framework on credit referencing, which will be more biting.
We are coming up with regulations that will go to Parliament that would strengthen the credit reporting framework so that it will be more incumbent on banks to do this. I mean, they're already required to do it, but we're going to make it even more stricter, just so that if banks don't do that, there are sanctions that are applicable. It would bite. Let me just say that it will make it more effective.
As a measure to restore confidence in the financial system, the Bank of Ghana, among other things, have reviewed guidelines, directives, and regulations of the banking sector in line with the new Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act 2016 at 930.
Why so? We'll stay a while longer in the banking sector because shareholders of Barclays Africa Group Limited have approved that the bank changes its name to Absa Group. Now, the approval is expected to set in motion the start of one of the largest rebrand projects in Africa. A statement from Barclays Bank on the matter said that the name change is expected to take effect in July 2018, and the chairman of Barclays Africa Group Limited, Wendy Lucas-Bull, said that the vote was in support of the name change in July, and this marks another milestone in the separation from Barclays PLC to become an independent African bank with global reach. And away from banking, the Africa Regional Director of Pro Forest, Abraham Bafo, has noted Ghana has lost almost all the 6.2 million hectares of forest outside the forest reserves. He blamed the situation on the lack of political will to maintain the country's forests.
Ghana had 8 million hectares of forest cover, out of which 1.8 million hectares was set aside as reserve. Of the 1.8 million hectares reserved, 0.2 million hectares have been encroached on, leaving 1.6 million hectares.
At the beginning of the last century, the government tried to set aside forest reserves. And the idea is to maintain those areas for permanent management, for forestry. And that means that areas outside reserves are for other land use options, agriculture, what have you. What has happened over the last 100 years is that we've lost almost everything outside forest reserves. That's all the 6 million hectares. To the extent that even some of the reserves, the 1.8 million, some of them have been converted to cocoa farms. So we no longer have even up to 1 million hectares, which is in good forest cover.
Africa Regional Director Pro Forest, Abraham Bafo, called for collaborative efforts to improve the situation. He indicated education is key to preserving the country's forest for economic development.
Government also seems to attach social dimension to it, livelihood. So we know it's illegal. They've done something which is illegal, but successive governments have not had the courage to say that this is illegal and don't do it. Of course, we've been saying don't do it, but they are doing it. So the challenge is, how do we get them out, if it's possible? And how do we bring back the forest? So for this TFA approach, what we are doing is to say, the small areas left outside forest reserves, which are forests, let's keep them as forest. And let's even try to improve the forest cover outside of forest reserves.
And Africa's youngest billionaire, Ashish Thakkar, has challenged Ghanaian business leaders to position themselves to play a part in Africa's rising future. Speaking at the Millennium Excellence Foundation Legacy Masterclass Series for Captains of Industry in Accra, he said the world is rapidly changing, and this presents an opportunity for business leaders to be creative and innovative.
Ashish Thakkar is an entrepreneur who started his first business in 1996 at the age of 15 years with a $5,000 loan. importing computer parts, including keyboards, mouse, and desktops from weekly trips to Dubai and selling it throughout Africa. Since then, he has driven the growth of the company from a small IT business in Uganda to the globally recognized multi-sector investment group. The company has presence across 25 African countries in sectors spanning technology, financial services, infrastructure, and real estate. Ashish, using his own personal life stories of entrepreneurship, challenged business leaders to dream big and to start small.
As an entrepreneur, regardless of which scale you're at, especially when you're starting off, I think it's really, really important to dream really big. Dream super big, but start super small. And I think that's important. Be patient. Entrepreneurship is a journey. It's not a destination. It's a constant thing. I was saying earlier that even after 22 years of working, I feel like I'm just getting started, as cheesy as that sounds. I really believe this is the beginning for Mara. And because it's a constant evolution.
He was optimistic about Africa's future, saying Africa is not only catching up with the developed world, but taking over.
We need to start changing the game from, instead of trying to bring Silicon Valley to Africa, we need to think about how we can take Africa to Silicon Valley, how we can create local innovation that we can take globally, how we can truly nurture things on the ground that we can take across the continent and more so globally. The inter-Africa trade percentages are so low so far, so low. And that's not a challenge, it's a huge opportunity.
The Legacy Masterclass is a rated course hosted in a private setting by global business leaders who present innovative ways to stay and excel in business.
And remember, you can get more business news updates on 3news.com. That will do for business tonight. My name is Nanikia Mensah Brampa. Alfred is standing by with more. Good evening.
Thank you, Nanikia, for business. A day school turned into a boarding school in order to meet demands of the free senior high school policy has become a nightmare for both students and teachers. With only one classroom block, lessons are held under trees for specific subjects, but students are forced to carry their desks to and fro for lessons and other activities.
This welcoming signage gladdens the heart of every first-time visitor to the Shia Senior High Technical School in the commercial cocoa-growing town of the Ghana-Togo border. The ancient town is still decent and well-organized, but a casual look at the school premises exposes challenges. The school, which was established in 1951, comprised of 2 junior high school blocks. However, in 1998, the school was converted into a community day school, but with no additional infrastructure constructed.
We don't have enough classroom. For instance, if rain is falling here right now, we have to go back to our classroom and the teaching won't go on again.
A community daycare center located about 60 meters away from the school was used as an administrative and science block.
Facilities like school buildings, desks, teaching materials. The desks that you see right now are being produced by the PTA.
12 years later, the school was renamed as the Shia Senior High Technical after it was absorbed under the Ghana Education Service System. This happened in 2010 with pledges to expand infrastructure. But to date, not a single structure has been added to the 2 junior high school blocks. Matters got worse for the Shia Senior High Technical when its enrollment, which was under 200 students, increased to 400 students following the implementation of the free SHS policy. Additionally, the Shia Senior High Technical was converted into a boarding school with only 2 junior high school blocks serving as its infrastructure. With no option available, one of the 2 classroom structures was converted into a makeshift boys' dormitory, while the girls have to trek 1.5 kilometers from a rented orphanage. Aside walking through a bush path to school daily, the 2-year rent agreement expires at the end of this academic year. Academic activities are therefore held under trees and in the open at the mercy of the weather and sometimes reptiles.
Because the last time we were in the class and then we realized a snake falling from the tree. So the class was disturbed. We even closed down the class. And then why we will not wait for students or we will not wait for the teacher to finish every syllabus. Because once we distracted that class, we can't have it the next time again.
Students have to lift heavy decks to and fro thrice or more times a day for both academic and extracurricular activities. The Shia community intervened by constructing these pavilions, but this was not enough to meet the needs of the school.
Sometimes when a particular student are having electives, that means the other people in the class have to move out from the class to be under trees. We don't have any better place to study. So you have to be loitering around before the others can use the classroom.
They've also provided a 25-acre land ready for relocation, but are yet to get a positive response from government. Not even the inclusion of the community in the erstwhile Mahama-led administration's E-block project could materialize.
We are depending on the old middle school, which is not adequate for SHS. We had a site since 2004, which we felt the government could assist to develop. So we continue making small pockets of structures around the middle school.
These trees along the school park serve as staff common room for teachers. The makeshift boys' dormitory is currently congested. Students meander their way and will have to lift 6 or more chop boxes to gain access to their books and other valuables. The school kitchen is another spectacle. We were told caterers have to abandon cooking for the students whenever it rains. The makeshift kitchen only serves as a shade from the sun. The least said about the boys' bathroom, the better. Like the kitchen, this bamboo fence was provided by the students. Academic activities would continue to depend on the pattern of the rains.
It's really bad. Sometimes when lectures is in progress, maybe they call for another class, they have to be looking for desks or carry their desks from their class.
Clearly, the academic calendar of the school could be disrupted, but these students won't be expected to take the same examination as their colleagues in other parts of the country.
I also wrote this letter and served the whole municipal chief executive with this letter so that the assembly could come to our aid with at least 6 units classroom block, but it has not been captured in the assembly's 2018 budget.
Chief Executive of Kwan's Estate, Kofi Anoche, is extremely worried.
It's a discrimination and a violation against human rights of those people who may want to be in boarding school but are not getting the facility. Because under Article 25 of the Constitution, it says clearly that the government will provide equal opportunities and facilities for people who want to go to school. This includes the SHS.
He wants government to rethink the education policy to ensure equal benefits to all.
We commend this government by introducing the free SHS. But the question is that, what about those schools without boarding facilities? Equal opportunities and facilities. The underlying this thing is equal opportunities and facilities.
Now, the Association of LPG Retailers have declared a nationwide strike to take effect from May 16. This decision comes after the association gave government a 1-week ultimatum to rescind its decision to implement the cylinder recirculation policy or face its wrath. It argued that all indigenous LPG businesses would collapse if the government rolls out the policy. The LPG Marketing Companies Association, which acts as an intermediary between the bulk distribution companies and the LPG retailers, says any decision by the LPG operators to down their tools will adversely affect them. The Ghana LPG Operators Association had earlier alleged that some giant multinational companies were behind the government's implementation of the cylinder recirculation model of liquefied petroleum gas LPG distribution.
So live here on News 360, we'll be back with some more stories. To stay.
Welcome back to News 360 now for some international news. And Liberian Vice President Joao Howard Taylor has apologized to President George Weah live on morning television for leaving the country frequently without informing him.
New Dawn newspaper goes on to say there has been speculation for some time about bad blood between the two, with some pointing to lack of trust of a connection with her ex-husband, jailed former President Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was convicted in 2012 for terrorism, rape, murder and the use of child soldiers by rebel groups in neighboring Sierra Leone during the 1991-2002 civil war, in which some 50,000 people died. The alliance between Weah, the former World Footballer of the Year, and Miss Howard Taylor always seemed somewhat unlikely. Historically, Weah was a staunch critic of Charles Taylor and his National Patriotic Party (NPP), so observers wondered about his motives. That's especially as Miss Howard Taylor made her allegiance to her ex-husband clear. During campaigning for the election, she said the country needed to get back to the agenda outlined by Taylor when he was president.
All right, News 360 returns shortly with some entertainment news after this. Do stay.
Welcome back to Entertainment News this evening. It is their duty to oversee the day-to-day affairs of an artist, advise and counsel talent concerning professional matters. But how important is the role of a management or an artist manager? Francis Doko explains.
Artist manager is somebody who takes interest in the work of a creative, and try to manage every aspect of their business. I mean, the essence of that is for the artist to focus on what they know how to do best, because it's the things about finance and all that, but they eventually will make sure that they manage, the process. Unfortunately, when it comes to Ghana, there are people who are supposed to be artist managers, or people who manage the artists and their brand, who end up as their errand boys. Instead of giving them the bigger role of managing everything around them, they rather, treat them like people they want to send around, And I think that ought to be looked at, because the artist manager, it's more than an errand boy. In fact, he's not even supposed to be an errand boy. He's supposed to make sure that he looks at a bigger thing in terms of the strategy and all that to position you in an area where you would succeed. Sometimes artists start from a very, low area, and so they usually will call a friend, to ask them to take care of their business. And it's usually in that situation where they now, instead of relying on them for direction and guidance, they now are the guys rather that they send around. It is because the artist, for example, has not hired somebody of a high professional caliber who will manage their business. And so, I mean, if you go and hire somebody who knows what they're about and they come in to manage your business and your brand, you definitely not be sending them around. But usually when you call somebody and say, Charlie, I better come and do this thing for me, it is in that situation that happens. So it is a joint thing. I mean, for example, if you're an artist manager and you don't have the ability to, it is good to say it. And if you're an artist and
definitely some nuggets of wisdom there if you do plan.
Absolutely. We've had cases, artist managers have described themselves as errand boys.
I know, right?
That your artist now?
I don't have an artist.
The one you like?
Okay, let's leave it there. Thank you very much for staying with us here on News 360 live from the News Hub at Adesawe. My name is Solis Rose Corte.
And my name is Alfred Akanse. On behalf of the team, we say have a good evening.